Welcome to the Arnie Ball Show. This week we're going to look ahead to our conference tournament at Ohio State, where we play Lewis on Friday night and hopefully someone else on Saturday night. We'll review last week's early round conference win over Mercyhurst, and our guest is Dan Gebhardt to talk about the NCAA tournament here in Fort Wayne. So please stay with us.
Brian's a student that I had in my resource class. Came from a very poor background. Brian just needed a friend, so we paired him with a community leader. He would take him to rodeos, and then he would take him to plays and different things that this child would never have been exposed to. This man taking his time to come and have lunch with him meant more than anything.
Point a kid in the right direction. This is General Colin Powell of America's Promise. Call us and help keep America's Promise.
Welcome to this week's Arnie Ball Show. I'm your host, Mark Franke, and our sponsors again are Fujifilm and your local REMCs going under the name of Touchstone Energy. Arnie, we're in the thick of things now. We started the MIVA tournament last week at home and won over Mercyhurst. And I guess a win is a win when it gets to tournament time, but perhaps not as pretty as we would have liked. And now we have to look forward to playing Lewis Friday night over in Columbus, and then hopefully be playing somebody else on Saturday night.
You know, that's as you were complaining a little bit ago about not doing very well in the opening, but that's as good as you've done the sponsors this year.
I got the sponsors right. Yeah, I got tongue-tied at the opening. I forgot who we played Saturday night.
But that was as good as you've done. Those two, Fuji and Touchstone, will appreciate the fact that you did really good.
I finally got them right after how many years? Fuji's been a sponsor for 3 years at least, right?
And we only got one more or two more shows at the most to go yet, and you were right on.
Yeah, well, even I can learn once in a while.
They'll want to come back next year because you finally got it right. So I don't care how bad you screwed up the opening. I thought that was really good.
Okay. So speaking of screwing up, it looked like we were almost going to do that against Mercyhurst, didn't it? We got into a funk and didn't play particularly well near the end of all three games, really.
Yeah, I was beginning to think it was going to be an early exit for us. We may even make it to Buckeye Land the way we played after we got ahead 11-3. You know, we got ahead 11-3 in the first game, and then we decided to say
we had 8-0
in the first game.
Yeah.
I don't remember 11-3, but you're probably right. You're much better at those number things than I am. And then all of a sudden, we didn't play very well, and we kind of struggled the rest of the night, not playing very well. We only played well enough at the end of each game to win and get a little help from the official.
Boy, there were some strange endings, all three games. One game ended on a yellow card, which this year a yellow card means a point. We were serving, so we got point 15 on a yellow card. And they got a second yellow card, so we started off game 3 with an immediate side out. They were serving.
Yeah, we served in all three games. That's maybe the first time we ever got to do that.
The first server, all three games, that's right. So, we've tried to do that before, but usually got caught.
It was really neat. You know, we talk about this all the time, and of course we'll run into the same thing this next weekend with Lewis. Those teams come in with nothing to lose and everything to gain, and they're an emotional group anyhow. They always have been. Even when we go over there, they've been. I don't think we ever lost to them, have we?
No, but we've lost some games to them. Never lost a match to them.
And so, you know, when we got ahead of them 8-0, 11-3, our kids become a little complacent, and all of a sudden they get a little excited because they score a point or two, and the next thing you know, it's just very difficult. And we didn't play very well. We made a lot of serving errors. Our passing was just so-so. You know, we just kind of went through the motions, and they played, I thought, very, very well. Their middles played really well. One of the things that I thought disrupted them a great deal was the referee called their setter for a lift, like the third or fourth play of the first game. And we've been complaining all year about the fact that he actually catches and throws the ball, and I thought that really hurt them in the beginning, but then it may have also put some energy into them. You know, got them about half honked off at them, with the referees and us and everybody else. And then they thought everything went against them, and that's when the thing became very, very emotional.
Actually, from an officiating standpoint, when Eric called that early in game 1, it's probably the time to do it. If a setter does tend to push the envelope, so to speak, on how he can handle the ball, and you're not going to like it. You better tell them right off the bat rather than waiting to late in the match.
Well, that's certainly true, and Eric didn't back down from that standpoint either. I think he called him a lift one other time in a double hit in Game 3. The double hit was really a good call. I'm not sure about the other one, but as an official, you have to do that, and Eric did do that. He certainly, at the end of Game 2, when Eric overruled the linesperson about the ball being in or out, and I couldn't tell from our videotape because it doesn't show it. Now, maybe the TV tape shows, but I haven't looked at it. So I don't know whether Eric was right or wrong.
I asked the fans who were sitting down there. They said it was in by 6 inches at least.
So Eric was correct, and if indeed the fans are telling the truth.
Well, they're all our alums, so our former players.
Well, it was in about, it was in. But anyhow, that obviously created some controversy, but Eric stood very strong, very strong. Eric's a good official, and he would never do anything to jeopardize the outcome of the game if he didn't think it was right.
Well, I think probably the one thing that hurt us, and this is something we're going to have to really watch Friday night against Lewis too, is when Mercyhurst's emotional level went up, we let it push ours down, or somehow that affected us rather than just affecting them.
Somewhat uncharacteristic of us too, because we've gotten those kind of matches with Quincy and with Loyola, not so much with Ohio State, but especially those two, and it seems to raise our level of play instead of us just kind of mellowing out. And didn't seem to affect us a whole lot last Saturday. We just said, okay, whatever. We know we're going to win, and we'll just kind of play along here and not raise our level of play or emotional level of play like it usually does. Didn't happen.
Well, Mercyhurst was seeded number 7, which means they finished second to last in the conference, and that's got to be the best 7th place team we've ever had in the MIVA. Just shows the balance of the conference.
Well, the conference really is balanced. Clark, of course, ended up finishing last, and they even gave Ohio State a pretty good tussle in their semifinal match. And of course, when you end up with Quincy and Loyola and Ball State all tied, I think they were 6 and 8 or something like that, but they're all tied. The parity is just much better now than maybe any time I've ever been in the league, and I've been involved in this thing for about 25 years. So you just can't rest when you play somebody at this point.
Well, Long Beach found that out because they got upset last week by Loyola Marymount.
Well, the same thing is true out west. I don't think it's true in the East, but certainly out west. And those final 2 matches they've got left out there are going to be just like the 2 we got at Ohio State. You can't let your guard down. You just cannot let your guard down.
As we look forward to Lewis, we've beaten them twice this year. In fact, last year the tournament kind of played out the same way. We went over to Lewis, who was hosting at the time, and we were playing Lewis. That was when we had Hector hurt and Chris's shoulder was bothering him, and Lewis thought, well, they'll take care of us and win the tournament. And it kind of turned out a little differently for them, didn't it?
Well, that certainly did, and the matchups are exactly the same as they were last year. And so, obviously, I hope history repeats itself. That would be real nice for us. And I'm sure that's something we'll talk a little bit more about in the third segment. I want to go back to the Mercyhurst match just for a second, because it's real important that I thank Nick and student government and all the fans and the students that came to the match on Saturday night. We had that little birthday bash thing, and we had a bunch of T-shirts, and they were all gone just like that. And we had a bunch of birthday cake, and that was the same way, gone right away. And it was just a real pleasure to have student government involved and the students involved and our fans involved. We had over 1,000 fans at that match, and it's Mercyhurst, and nothing meant towards Mercyhurst, but it's not a household name. And so I'm just really thankful to everyone for coming to the match and supporting our kids.
Hopefully student government will make that an annual occurrence. Obviously not a 20th birthday party, but some kind of function that they can build around and try to encourage more students to come out.
Well, I certainly hope so. That's one of the things that in the 20 years I've been here, certainly you've been here a little longer than I have been, that kind of comes and goes as a student involved not only in athletics, but other activities as well. And so hopefully we can kind of get the thing kicked off and get going and make this an annual thing of some kind.
Well, when we come back, Dan Gebhardt will join me. Dan is the tournament director for the NCAA tournament that's occurring in 2 weeks, and we'll talk a little bit about ticket sales and everything else related to the tournament. So please stay with us.
Every day, 10 children are killed by gunfire. You can help stop the violence. Call 1-800-WE-PREVENT. Not one more lost life. Not one more grieving family. Not one more.
Gone to graveyards one by one. Oh, when will we ever learn?
Welcome back to the Arnie Ball Show. Our guest this week is NCAA Tournament Director Dan Gebhardt. Dan is a staff member here at IPFW. I thought it was for 87 years. He's corrected me. He says, no, it's really 88 years. And Dan also served as Tournament Director in 94. Did you do it in 88?
And 88, right.
So this is your third time through.
Yep.
Actually, the first thing I want to ask you about, you have to be honored being on the show this week after following the Afro Dons and Bullseye Hartley. For you to be follow them, you were the only guest who could possibly keep that level of splendor up.
And I can't tell you how honored I am. I mean, it's a real privilege. I dropped everything I was doing today just so I could be here because I was invited at the last minute. So apparently your other guest refused to show. So.
Well, the amazing thing was when you called me this morning to say you were going to be on the show, I normally don't know till I walk in here who the guest
so you
is.
had some advance notice then, right?
I had some advance notice. You wouldn't believe the list of questions I've got for you.
Well, that's part of what I have to do as tournament director is advanced planning. So I just wanted to show you how it works here a little bit. So.
How are ticket sales going?
Ticket sales are a little disappointing. In '88, obviously, that was the first time we'd hosted. It was a brand new NCAA championship in Fort Wayne. People were real excited, and obviously we didn't make it that year. So '94 had the added impetus that we were playing real well. Everybody thought we had a real good opportunity to be selected, and we were. And it was just a great opportunity. Ticket sales went through the roof. We at that time held the record for best attendance for a two-day tournament. It's since been surpassed by Hawaii, which we cannot beat this year because Hawaii has a much bigger arena than we play in. But it's a little disappointing. I think key is that, and probably you and Arnie have already talked about that, is how they play this weekend and if they get in that tournament or not. I think that we'll have a lot of ticket sales if we're selected to play in a tournament. So.
Actually, no, we didn't talk about that.
Sorry.
We don't intend to either.
You don't intend to talk about that, okay.
So the tickets can be still purchased, obviously,
right?
But through Ticketmaster and Coliseum box office.
Yeah,
right?
All Ticketmaster outlets have tickets available, and then you can walk up to the Coliseum ticket office and purchase right at the ticket office. So.
And the schedule is Thursday night at what, 5:30?
5:30 and 8 o'clock are the scheduled game times. The first one will obviously start at 5:30. The next one will not start before 8 o'clock, and it will be like 35 minutes after the game, depending on how long the first match goes. And then Saturday it's at 1 o'clock, which is a change from what we've done in the past, and that's because ESPN is broadcasting it live, and they had a lot of influence into when that game would be played. So it'll be played at 1 p.m. Saturday. And that is a change in the tournament format for what people have seen in the past. Always before there was a consolation match, and this year there is not. Don't know when they started that. I know last year they didn't play a consolation match either.
It's been a while. That's the best thing they've ever done is get rid of that stupid consolation match.
One of the things that I'm a little not concerned about, but just don't know how they're going to process this, is they give awards to all four teams, and I don't know when they'll do that for the third and fourth place teams, or however they determine what place they finish in, since those teams may or may not be here on Saturday. So.
Yeah, that's true. I'm trying to remember last year we obviously weren't in the top two, but I think they gave them to us after the end of the
championship match.
Championship match, yeah. All right, I know what they had them in the locker room. I think after we got them on Thursday night after we lost. By the time our team got to the locker room, I think they had them in there already.
So there was no public presentation.
Yeah,
it was
no
just
public. Right.
Okay.
So the 1 o'clock start on Saturdays is somewhat controversial, at least among local people, and that's due to TV.
We're really concerned about that. In fact, we made the pitch at the time that was determined to go at 1 o'clock, that we didn't think that was a very good time for our local crowd. I think there are a number of factors. That also happens to be Kentucky Derby weekend. I think some members of the NCAA committee really wanted to see a live broadcast. I'm not sure why. I'm not sure that there's a real advantage to being live versus tape delayed, provided it's not 3 weeks later tape delayed. But they decided that 1 o'clock was the best time, and I have some major concerns. As I said, I think if we're not playing in the championship match for whatever reason, because we didn't make the tournament or because we get beat on Thursday night, that the walk-up will not be as good as it would be if we're playing in that event, obviously. So, and I think that's key, whether it's at 1 o'clock or 7 o'clock, but I think you have a better chance of people coming in the evening than in the afternoon on a Saturday.
Well, we played an afternoon match in Coliseum earlier this season where we were scheduled at the same time. I think the Fury was playing that night, so we had to get in and out in the afternoon, and I think it probably hurt the crowd a little bit.
Plus, you're also playing in March or whenever that was, as compared to May, which you could have a gorgeous day at 80 degrees, and that could make a huge difference, depending on what the weather's like.
But if we're playing on Saturday afternoon,
I think people will come because I think they'll be real excited about the opportunity for us to win a national championship, and that's obviously one of the reasons you choose to host a tournament like this. So.
Would you like to give the locker room pregame talk to us on Friday night?
I'd be happy to do that. In fact, I'll bring some spreadsheets and show the bottom line.
The university's going to take a bath if you guys don't win.
That's exactly right. So.
That'll get them ready for their professional careers, right?
I would think so, yeah.
What else do you do in terms of, obviously, ticket sales? When you got to coordinate about 1 billion volunteers.
There's a number of factors, and actually it couldn't be done without a good staff helping you. And again, those are all unpaid staff members. None of us are getting any money for doing this, but we do have a coordinator of volunteers, Karen Skelton, who is overseeing all the volunteers. So we deal with the NCAA a lot. We've met with the committee. The committee will meet with us again before the tournament on Tuesday just to walk through and make sure everything's there. It's the rental of the facility. It's the advertising. It's the promotion of the event. It's getting all the things that the NCAA sends. You know, in addition to the tournament itself, there's a Yes Clinic for children 8 to 18. And
we talked about that.
Yeah, they're expecting about 400 kids, so they're sending them balls and T-shirts and all the registration process for that. Now, again, that's actually being done by Kelly Hartley over in the athletic department, but it's just part of the event. And so we've been meeting every other week since January to get this event underway, and I'm real pleased with the way things are falling into place. 88 was obviously a very learning experience, high learning curve for us, and I think we're getting more experience and it isn't taking as much effort. But you talked about me being here 88 years. I feel like I put those 88 years in about the last 3 months. So I'm looking forward to May the 7th and being able to kick back. So.
Well, that's the way the coaching staff always feels as the season winds down. After a long season of traveling and so forth. Right. And like this year, with the weather turning warm so much earlier, I think it's probably made it even more difficult.
Right.
So when the tournament's actually going on, once the NCAA gets in town and the committee, do you pretty much fade into the background? Your work's mostly done by then?
You know, I take it personally. It's my event, in essence, is how I feel about it, and so I won't give it up. But obviously, they take control when they come in. They obviously have a local sponsorship by one of the NCAA institutions. In this case, for this tournament, it's IPFW, and so they expect all the advanced planning, and they do work with you, but it's like over the phone, or it's maybe 1 or 2 visits and those kind of things. So all the work up front is done by the staff here at the university. And then they come in and they're in charge, and rightfully so. That's the way the tournament is structured. But I won't step out completely. In fact, I believe they'll set up a tournament committee per se, and I'll be a member of that committee based on my position as tournament director. But the NCAA championship staff and the committee itself, which is made up of 3 individuals representing each of the 3 regions for men's volleyball, will basically be in charge of the tournament once it starts here on Thursday.
Who's hosting next year? You know?
Long Beach State.
Long Beach, are you going to have contacts probably with some?
Actually, they have contacted us. They will be here in force. They expect to have a presentation set up in the rotunda of the Coliseum with the site and advanced ticket information and those kind of things about what's happening in Long Beach at that time of year. And we did the same thing. Arnie and I, when we hosted in 88 and 87, went to UCLA, who hosted that year, because we want to get a feel for it. So that's not atypical. They'll participate in all the events that go with it. There's a banquet on Wednesday night, and there's a press conference on Wednesday and on Friday. And so they'll participate because they're trying to get a feel for the things they need to do to have a good tournament, too. I actually think that we set the key for that, both in 88 and most likely in 94. I think that we've done some really nice things, added some things to the tournament that format that people have adopted we were the first ones that I know of that actually put out a separate tournament information manual to all the teams so that they could what to expect in the community, what to expect in the tournament. There's a number of things that have to be done from the selection date, which is Sunday, until the time they get on a plane, typically Tuesday, to fly here. And so, we try to give them advance notice of, okay, you got to take care of all these things and be thinking about these things in advance, because it's going to be an awful short time frame to take care of these kind of things. So.
There's quite a discussion going on the West Coast since Long Beach State was upset last weekend about not only who's going to win the tournament, but then based on all the scenarios of who wins when and comes out of that tournament, who becomes the fourth selection.
I think that's a holdover from 94. When,
the 94 thing has come back out again.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, I read a number of things on the bulletin board, which is probably where you did today too, and actually there were a number of people promoting Ohio State if we would beat Ohio State in the MIVA tournament, because Ohio State has a great record against those teams out on the West Coast, and they're beating each other up. And then on the other hand, you see those people who believe the Final Four is really being held this weekend in Pepperdine because the 4 best teams in the country are there instead of here in
Yeah, there is
in
a
the
lot of
league
that
later,
West
so
Coast
mentality.
Yeah, we'll call it mentality. That's a good one for it. So, Dan, you want to one more time tell us about how to get tickets?
Sure. Any Ticketmaster outlet, Coliseum box office. You can call. That's 483-1111. And we'd be happy to sell you a ticket, and we hope to see a lot of people there, even if we're not in it. As I said, we're all hoping that we are because we think that'll be a great atmosphere. But even if we're not, we just would love to pack the place up. So.
No Channel 56 televising of it, although the crack Channel 56 staff will be probably helping ESPN.
Well, I hate to say this, but there is a possibility of that actually down the road. Tape delayed.
Tape delayed. We
yeah.
might get permission to do
We might
that.
get permission to do that.
But
so.
the only scenario in which case we'd be interested in that would be
We're in it.
one more chance the players watch us, tell them we got to be in it or
That's
we
right.
lose money.
That's right.
That's Dan Gebhardt, NCAA Tournament Director. When we come back, Arnie will talk a little bit about this upcoming MIVA weekend, so please stay with us.
What would you do if you had to choose between the buffalo and the giraffes? Between a flower or an elephant? What would you choose? What if you had to decide between a 100-year-old tree and a 1,000,000-year-old beach? Between drinking clean water or breathing clean air? Would you make the right choice? Would there be a right choice? Now there's a way to help. Not just one, but all these things. EarthShare, the world's leading environmental groups working together. It's one choice we can all live with. Ask your employer about workplace giving.
It was called the greatest generation any society has ever produced. They were ordinary people who half a century ago did nothing less than help save the world. Millions served in uniform, millions more served at home, and nearly 500,000 gave their lives. And yet there is no national memorial to honor their sacrifice. It is time to say thank you.
Call now and help build the National World War II Memorial.
Welcome back to the Arnie Ball Show. Arnie, it's always good to have Dan on, isn't it?
Daniel is a man that we can't hardly do without around here in regards to helping Arnie when he has a project that needs to be done. And of course, back better than a year or so ago when we knew we were going to get the NCAA tournament, I asked Dan if he'd be the chairman of it because at that time we were in the middle of hiring an athletic director. And of course, Dan has experience having done it in 1994. I think he's getting a little frustrated with the way things have been going in regards to the NCAA and the changeover of the person in charge of the tournament because there's been a change. And
What's his name? Carl Johnson?
Carl, I believe that's right.
Yeah.
I've not met the guy, so I don't even know.
Well, that was the old guy.
You'll have to ask, I don't know. I don't know what the guy's name is, but anyhow.
And the NCAA also thinks very highly of Dan because he's always run a very good tournament. The details are attended to.
Well, it's certainly been very successful, and as Dan alluded to earlier in the last segment, one of the things that we're concerned about is the fact that the tournament 3 or 4 years ago got changed to Thursday, Saturday, and now the Saturday game is going to be at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So it's kind of difficult marketing-wise, but we'll see how it all works out.
Well, before we worry about the tournament, we're going to have to worry about Lewis on Friday night.
It is a major concern for you and I both. Everybody keeps talking about the fact that we're going to play Ohio State in the finals, and the old adage, if it's difficult to beat a team 3 times, well, we've beaten Lewis twice, so this is number 3.
That's right.
And certainly they have some revenge, like we talked about in the first segment. The tournament draw is the same. We beat them at their place last year, knocked them out of the tournament. I don't know, how many years in a row is this we've played them now? It seems like it's the last 3 or 4
wow,
that we keep meeting up with them, and the odds are sometime or another going to be against us, and hopefully it won't be this year.
Well, they were beating us for a period of years there when our program was down a little bit. They even beat us in Fort Wayne, remember?
I do remember.
That was 3 years ago.
Yeah.
They beat us pretty badly, embarrassed us. So we still probably owe them a shot or two.
Well, certainly we do that. They're a very dangerous team. 2 weeks ago they were over in Hawaii and beat Hawaii, a team that handled us over there back in January. The young man named Kionis is just very, very athletic, and if you remember, they run that real fast tempo to the outside, and we had all kinds of trouble with him when they were here the last time. Their opposite, the kid named Zambo, will not play because he's hurt.
He's still hurt?
He didn't play here the last time either. They've moved the big kid, the Bindon kid, the great big 6'9" kid, to the opposite. So that makes them a little bit bigger out on the right side where we like to attack from. So that maybe gives them a little more of an advantage than what we went last time we played them.
But perhaps weakens them some in the middle then, right?
Well, John Wick has to go back in the middle, and so certainly that's a trade-off. That means Alfonso, the other young man from Puerto Rico, then goes back to the outside into passing position, which is where he was at when we played them at their place, and we took advantage of that. So those are some things we have to take a look at and hopefully take advantage of in regards to their personnel as compared to our personnel.
The other match will be Ball State and Ohio State. Ball State beat Quincy over the weekend. What do you think is going to happen there?
Well, I think Ohio State will win, but it may not be as easy as they think. If you remember last year, Ball State and Ohio State played, and Ohio State was heavily favored, and it ended up being 5 games.
Yeah, 5 games.
And Ball State actually had them beaten and let them off the hook. Now, certainly knowing Coach Hansen at Ohio State, he'll remind the players of that, but we can remind players of that, and a lot of times it doesn't make any difference. Certainly Ohio State's heavily favored, not only to win that match, but to win the tournament. And if they're not careful, Ball State could jump up and bite them. Ball State's got some good young players. They've been really up and down all year long, but they're in a position now to make a statement. And it's like Mercyhurst was with us. Ball State's got nothing to lose and everything to gain.
Well, one thing that I think is on the players' mind is that they don't believe that Ohio State is a better team than we are. They've beaten us twice this year, but both of those were close matches. Even though we lost at home in 3, all the games were close. And of course, the fiasco with the 6-hour drive over there in January. And basically, it's the same Ohio State team playing the same IPFW team that last year we won with.
Well,
And we have a healthy Hector Soto.
There's no doubt what the two teams are very evenly matched. It's their strength in the middle against our strength on the outside. I understand that they've got a couple of kids that jump serving that weren't jump serving the last time we saw them, but we have Jeff Attack float serving them when they didn't see us. And so, the matchups are going to be the same, the play will be the same. I expect that if we get to that point, and if they get to that point, that it would be just a really good match, hopefully well played. And the difficult thing about that is, once again, if we both get there, is that one of the two teams probably won't get to go to the finals, and that's too bad. The quality of the level of our teams, and when you're looking at Lewis and us and Ohio State, ought to have an opportunity to go into postseason play, and they just don't.
I imagine the last thing Coach Hansen says to his team on Friday night before they take the floor will be exactly the same thing you tell our team. Forget Ohio State, forget IPFW, you're playing Ball State, you're playing Lewis tonight, and that's all that matters.
He'll say that, and we'll say that, but you and I both. I think we have a little bit of advantage from that standpoint because we've developed this rivalry a little bit with Lewis, and it's a pretty strong thing back and forth. Ball State and Ohio State have lost a little bit of that from the old days, so I think maybe from that standpoint, from a motivational standpoint, we have a little bit of an advantage over Ohio State.
Well, that'll be Friday night. Lewis will play at 5 or 5:30?
5:30 their time.
5:30 their time. 4:30 our time, and then the finals will be 7
Correct.
On Saturday night. For Fujifilm Touchstone Energy, Dan Gebhardt, head coach Arnie Ball, this is Mark Franke. So long and thanks for watching. Welcome to the Arnie Ball Show. This, unfortunately, is our last show of the season because we had a disappointing loss to Ohio State last weekend in the MIVA tournament. Arnie and I will be talking about that when we come back and looking ahead to the NCAA tournament this weekend at the Coliseum. Please stay with us.
Brian's a student that I had in my resource class. Came from a very poor background. Brian just needed a friend, so we paired him with a community leader. He would take him to rodeos, and then he would take him to plays and different things that this child would never have been exposed to. This man taking his time to come and have lunch with him meant more than anything.
Point a kid in the right direction. This is General Colin Powell of America's Promise. Call us and help keep America's promise.
Not a good one.
Welcome to the Arnie Ball Show. I'm your host, Mark Franke. Our sponsors are Fujifilm and Touchstone Energy. Arnie, this is our last show because Saturday night was our last match of the season. Disappointing loss to Ohio State, but a very good Ohio State team that played quite well and quite frankly deserved to win. Doesn't make it any easier, though.
Yeah, we need to reiterate what you said just a little bit ago, and my earpiece is coming out, in regards to Fujifilm and Synergy Energy.
Touchstone.
Touchstone.
I said Touchstone.
No, I thought you said Synergy.
No, you said Synergy. I said Touchstone.
Touchstone. Okay.
And it is Touchstone.
For being our sponsors for this year. We're very appreciative of that. Certainly without our sponsors and without our fans, our program wouldn't be nearly as successful as it has been, and we've had wonderful sponsors and fans this year. In particular, I thought the fan support that we got at Ohio State last weekend was just outstanding. I think we had more fans there than they did.
We may have. We had a lot. And they were noisy till about midway through the third game when they ran out of things to cheer for. But up to that point, it was a fiercely competitive match.
Was that the first two games were as strong and evenly matched and competitive as volleyball as maybe we've seen all year, with our team competing against someone else.
Ohio State has beaten us 3 times this year, and they've all been hard-fought matches like that. Even though this one was over in 3, it went more than 2 hours.
Well,
so it's,
when we talked about that going in to this match with the kids. We knew it would be a long, difficult match. When we got ahead 8-4, 10-4, 11-7 in the first game, we were all pretty excited. You, I, kids, everybody. Then we hit that one of those flat spots where we couldn't score, and Ohio State got in a rhythm. And every time we scored a point or two, it seemed like we made a service error and just kind of let that momentum get away from us. And when we did, we held Fash to below 15%, or right around 15%. Ulrey, right around 15%. But Rivera decided to go nuts on us and hit, 75, 78%, and with 30 attempts and, 20 kills with no errors. I mean, we hadn't expected that. We expected their middles to give us a lot of trouble, and they did. But once they got in a rhythm, we couldn't get them out of that rhythm. And they played really well.
They got in a real rhythm defensively too. We had trouble terminating the ball. They were digging up everything.
Well, early, we actually blocked a lot of their offensive attack. I think we had 6 blocks maybe in the first game. They only ended up 10 for the match. But then our passing broke down a little bit, and not dramatically, just a little bit, and we had to become a little more predictable, and we were unable to run the middle in particular. And so they loaded up on Hector, and of course we probably talk about Jeff a little bit later on the show in regards to all we went through with him this weekend. Loading up on those guys, and early also in the match, Scotty was in a real nice tempo on the backside. And then when we began to struggle with our passing, he lost the rhythm. He and Chris lost the rhythm they had. And boy, if Scotty's not a factor for us offensively, we're going to struggle. And he was early, and we were very successful. And the longer the match went on, the poorer that got, and the more we struggled.
Their setter, Angel Aja, was MIVA Player of the Year, and he's made the All-American list. And he was really the big difference, because basically that was the same team last year that we beat with essentially the same team last year. And I think the real difference was Angel just doing a much better job of leading the team.
Well, there's no doubt but what he's an All-American player, and he was the Player of the Year in our conference, and I think he deserves to be. He's always been really a good setter, and I thought he was even better technically this year than he was last. He did some really nice things, and he was in total command of that team. And of course, I thought also that's the difference between this year and last year for them is that their passing was better, more consistent. And they were able to get the ball to those middles. And just not against us. I mean, Colin McMillan's the leading hitter in the country. And certainly Renee has to be up there too. And in order to do that, you've got to handle that first ball. Once again, in the first game, when we served tough back in zone 1 and they had trouble getting the ball in the middle, and Ulrich sailed those balls out of bounds and Fash sailed, shoot, we were cruising. But as soon as that passing got better and they could get those middles involved, that's what made Rivera so difficult for us to handle. Those two middles are hitting 60–70%, so we're having to commit block. We get one-on-one on the outside, and he's running up inside or hitting that because he's left-handed, hitting that ball across court. And geez whiz, after looking at some of the tape, I mean, I don't know how many balls he hit that actually hit our middle blockers' elbows because they were late getting to the outside and go straight down. I mean, you can't dig those balls, obviously. So it just made them much more effective. Their serving wasn't dynamic, but it was more consistent than ours. They didn't make as many errors as we did. And when you let people off the hook, why, you pay the piper.
You said that their passing was a big technical improvement for them this year, and certainly part of that is due to their libero, who's able to do a lot of the passing for them and take the pressure off the primary passers such as Ulrich and Rivera.
Well, he played really well, and against Lewis on Friday night, Mike Cummings was real effective with his short serve, and so we did some of that against Ohio State. But what happened with Ohio State is that their middles are so strong, they passed our short serve and ran the middle. And even when we committed, we couldn't stop it. Lewis couldn't do that against us because Lewis was so dependent upon their outside people as compared to Ohio State, who depends on their middle people. So even that short serve that Mike, once again, I thought he served pretty well on Saturday night against Ohio State, but they obviously knew we were capable of doing that and prepared for it, and were able to run the middle, and we couldn't stop it.
Probably the biggest difference between our team this year and our team last year was our serving. Last year we may have been the best serving team in the country, and this year we lost a lot of that edge. Our error rate went up. Part of it probably was with the libero in there. Every team now has a full-time dedicated passer, and that makes it more difficult to use a serve to your advantage. So in that respect, the libero, who was supposed to help the defensive side of the court, is in fact helping the offensive side.
Yeah, that libero position has really not only changed the way the game looks, but certainly the way the game is played. And as you mentioned, the intent was to make it better defensively. I actually think it's made it better offensively. I'm not real convinced that that's the reason our team wasn't better serving. If you look at our team and the serving inconsistency, because we made a lot of serving errors, and when you make errors, the other team doesn't have to pass the ball or doesn't make a choices whether they're going to pass the ball or not. And we were pretty consistent with that all along. Same deal happened to us out a year ago in Los Angeles. In that first game, we've talked about this a lot. In the first game at the semifinals last year, if we don't make all those serving errors, we win that match in 3. Instead of that, we made all those errors, and we did the same thing pretty consistently this year.
Yeah. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit about this week's NCAA tournament at the Coliseum. It's something you'll certainly want to come out and watch, so please stay with us here on Channel 56.
What would you do if you had to choose between the buffalo and the giraffes? Between a flower or an elephant? What would you choose? What if you had to decide between a 100-year-old tree and a 1,000,000-year-old beach? Between drinking clean water or breathing clean air? Would you make the right choice? Would there be a right choice? Now there's a way to help. Not just one, but all these things. EarthShare, the world's leading environmental groups working together. It's one choice we can all live with. Ask your employer about workplace giving.
Is that you?
Welcome back to the Arnie Ball Show. Arnie,
Is there a mouse in the studio somewhere, Dan? We got a mouse in here somewhere? I hear a mouse.
Dan saying safe at first, or I don't know what he's signaling over there. It is time for baseball season.
I hope that mouse didn't come in and find us wherever he's at.
It is time for baseball season. The IPFW team's going to the conference tournament this weekend, aren't they?
I don't know.
Or is that next weekend? Next week.
Did they qualify?
Yeah, I think so. I just got the request for travel funds for them today.
I haven't talked to Billy, so I don't know.
See, that's the problem with our season. It ends so late that we don't get a chance to really follow the baseball team.
I've been out to see 3 or 4 games this year, but
That's because you don't have a day job.
well, that's true. I don't have a job, period. You know, I don't have a morning job, don't have a day job, don't have a night job. So
Just a weekend job.
I just collect my paycheck. That's all. My wife collects my paycheck. That's a better deal. You know, I was talking to you over the break that I was in Boston here yesterday, and of course we got paid yesterday or day before yesterday. She couldn't wait till I was gone. I don't know whether there's anything left in my checking account or not.
Yeah, well, I guess that's something you'll have to deal with.
I may have to come live at your place for a while.
Yeah, how many kids you got home right now? Just 2?
I've got 2 kids and 2 cats.
2 kids and 2 cats.
By next week this time I won't have any of them. They'll all be gone.
Because they're leaving, not because
Because I'm going somewhere. Oh, yeah.
Oh, well. NCAA tournament this weekend. First of all, we need to start by saying Coach Preston is a prophet. Because didn't he tell you a month ago when Long Beach was at the top of the heap and USC was playing like the greatest team in the country and BYU was still strong, Hawaii was looking good, he said Pepperdine and UCLA.
Well, it's funny you bring that up. He emailed me today because he's coming out for the Yes Clinic, wanting to know if we could get together and have a soda pop or do whatever. And I said, so I emailed him back and said, yeah, we can do that, probably. We'll get together with Coach Franke or Coach Johnson or somebody and figure out sometime or another to do that. And he said, by the way, aren't I really good? I told you it'd be Pepperdine and UCLA. So now he's got this great big head that we got to deal with.
Well, because he's the one who picked who the finalists were going to be, he ought to be the one who gets to buy the quantities of soda pop that we'll need.
Wait a minute, you're talking about a Southern California guy here.
That's right.
He is a welcher from way. I mean, there's no way.
Yeah, that's probably true.
You know? Yeah, he's a beach boy. You know, he's surfs all the time. He doesn't have any money.
Well, I think they have high salaries in Southern California, don't they? Keep up with the cost of living?
Yeah.
He lives in Santa Barbara, one of the most expensive cities in the United States to live in.
How many daughters he's got?
3, right?
Is that right? 3? He's got 4.
4?
He's got a set of twins, got an older one, set of twins, and a younger one. And then he have 4? No, he's got 3, that's right.
3.
Set of twins and a younger one. 3. He didn't have any money.
Yeah, that's probably true.
I mean, you only had 1. I have 2. He's got 3.
Yeah, my one was calling me last night again to discuss financial issues.
You know darn well he's going to come in here looking for a handout. And he's going to get one.
He's going to get one.
But he did make that prediction, and he was right.
Yeah, he was right. So UCLA actually beat Pepperdine, which I don't think anybody was rooting for UCLA. Pepperdine, Ohio State played Pepperdine in the season, and
correct.
It was at the end of their trip. They were really tired or something.
No, it was actually the second game in the trip. They played USC the night before.
Okay, that was it.
Then they went to Pepperdine and played.
Yeah, so they'd like to get another shot at him, and I think not only will they be the sentimental favorite here among the Midwesterners, but they, I think, have the kind of team that if they play well, Pepperdine's going to be in for a big surprise.
Well, they have played one another, so neither one could be surprised certainly with one another's play. I think Ohio State maybe has a little revenge factor. Obviously, they lost to them out there, but there was some questionable calls, and Ohio State was way ahead, I think, in game 1 or 2, or maybe it was game 1. I mean, way ahead, and ended up losing. So I would think that Ohio State will have plenty of incentive coming in here to play Pepperdine, and it's going to be the second match, so it's going to be the marquee match for the semifinals. I think it could be really good.
Yeah, the other one, UCLA and Penn State. Penn State's, well, they've just been an up and down team all year, and UCLA apparently is peaking here at the end, which is what Al Skates is very good at doing, isn't it?
Yeah, they always do. I mean, they have such a quality program of winning tradition. And, of course, that match was at Pepperdine. It wasn't at UCLA. And, of course, Al is a very good coach, has proved himself over the years to be very good, maybe the best, probably the best this country's ever seen in regards to college volleyball, male or female. And so they're always prepared and ready to win. They have a lot of depth. I mean, we saw them. We've played them. We know what they're like. They have an All-American setter who's been like that since his careers began.
Is he healthy now? He's had an injury problem on and off throughout the year.
As far as I know, he is, and you know he's a very good player. They have some other kids that are very good, and so does Pepperdine. But I sure hope Ohio State plays well.
Well, yeah, you and me both. It hurts obviously to get knocked out by a team, and your natural human inclination is to root against them. But in this case, Ohio State's a nice program. The kids are a great bunch. Coaching staff's a class act, and we've been so close to them, even though we don't want to lose to them. Now that we have, we're certainly rooting for them the whole way.
Well, there's no doubt about that. You know, of course, Pete goes back a long way. He's been over there like 14 years or so. So we've known Pete ever since he's been part of the Ohio State program, and they certainly run a quality program. And those kids are great kids. We went through the line after losing there Saturday night, and Rene Estevez put his arm around me and said, you know, it's been a real pleasure to compete against your team for 4 years and to know you. And that's a pretty class act coming through the line. And those kids are just like that. And certainly Pete and Tim are too. So, you know, their key is going to be able to play against Pepperdine like they played against us. And then, like I said, they played one another, so they know what the tendencies are. And I would expect nothing but a real high-quality match.
Pepperdine has not played in Fort Wayne in the 2 previous years we hosted, did they? So there'll be a new one for our fans to see.
This will be the first trip for them. They have been here before, but when we played in the Coliseum in our spring fling, first time, and of course they have an interim coach in Jeff Stork, and Jeff Stork was the starting setter on the Olympic team and we won the gold medal, so in 84 and 88 both.
Well, Jeff Stork is already a local favorite because remember when the USA team played the Coliseum on the second night, he started in place of Lloyd.
That's right. I forgot about that.
The fans are getting really upset with that. It wasn't Jeff Stork's fault.
He's a really wonderful person and has done a really nice job in the interim while Marv Dunphy is at the USA team. So it'll be nice to have him here in town.
That's this weekend at the Coliseum. We'll give you more information on that in the next segment when we come back. So please keep it here on 56.
As the American military gets smaller, who will be there to answer the call? They will. They're the National Guard and Reserve, and they make up half of today's military forces. As an employer, you may be asked to support their mission. Remember, their response depends on yours.
It was called the greatest generation any society has ever produced. They were ordinary people who half a century ago did nothing less than help save the world. Millions served in uniform, millions more served at home, and nearly 500,000 gave their lives. And yet there is no national memorial to honor their sacrifice. It is time to say thank you.
Call now and help build the National World War II Memorial.
Welcome back to the Arnie Ball Show. This segment, we're going to try to wrap up the season by looking ahead to next season, talk a little bit about what the team might look like next year. We probably ought to start by talking about Jeff Patak and the episode we went through with him this last weekend.
Saturday night, we walked out into the arena, and I sat down next to Javier Escobar, and he said, "You're jinxed. There's something wrong with you. What have you done in your past to deserve this?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, Jeff this year, Hector last year, Ricky the year before that." I went, "Ooh, maybe there's something in my past."
It's always the same position, isn't it?
Has always been the same position. So I guess the new kid we have coming in from Canada next year will be the guy to go down. Won't tell his dad that, but he's in trouble.
Jeff had a very bad case of the flu. In fact, Friday night he was not playing well and he was sweating profusely. He just looked terrible, and as soon as the match was over, he was vomiting his insides out and couldn't stop. In fact, the team doctor at Ohio State gave him a shot to cut down the stomach spasms, didn't he?
Yeah. Yes, he did. He gave him a shot, which didn't work, and bruised his rear end.
That's right. And then the next day, he was so dehydrated, he got, what, four bags of fluid of some kind intravenously.
4 liters.
4 liters.
4 liters of saline I can't say solution.
Saline solution.
Right. And the doc told me that in most big football players, the most they ever give them is 2. You know, when they dehydrate like Jeff had from throwing up.
So he was certainly in bad shape. Mike Cummings had the flu during the week. Did he really lose 15 pounds?
That's what they said.
How can he doesn't weigh hardly anything. How can he lose 15 pounds?
Well, he was flat on his back for 2 days.
Yeah.
So, you know, but he had it going from top to bottom, and it's not the top. So the thing with Jeff was pretty scary. I mean, his stomach cramped up so hard, and you know, I didn't even know it until the middle of that third game when we started playing poorly, and Cheek said something, and I'm looking out there, and you had mentioned he was sweating and all that kind of stuff, and more so than normal. And next thing I know, he's swallowing really hard and quite frequently, and so we called timeout. And when they made that run on us, I talked to him, and he said that he'd gotten sick from warm up, and of course he's not going to tell us because he wants to play. But he did not. He kept it all down until the end, and then he got really sick and actually threw up all night long.
Yeah,
it's a pretty scary thing.
Yep. Fortunately, it worked out okay though.
Well, he's all right.
It certainly hurt our team performance, but Jeff's fine. He'll recover.
You know, the help of the doc over there was just wonderful. I spent some time with him before with the doc and Jeff before the match when they were sticking the last 2 bags in him, liters, I guess I should say. And the doc said, we've gone through this all the time. He will not be in danger with his health, certainly, but he probably won't be very strong. And I thought Jeff played really well the first game, and the beginning of the second game, you could begin to see him start to slide.
Going, yeah.
So.
Well, it was nice that we're playing at Ohio State, a big Division I program where they have a team doctor on duty like that.
Well, yeah, they were really great. They took him down to their clinic, and they took care of him in the game before the game. So we need to say thank you to the team doc at Ohio State.
Absolutely. Another reason to root for Ohio State this
That's
weekend,
right?
They have
Absolutely.
a great team doctor. Jeff, of course, is one of the players coming back next year. Just be a junior. He's was freshman of the year in the NCAA a year ago, so there's still a lot of career ahead of him. We've also got, in the middle, Josh Sanders is coming back, as is Angel Ruiz. Both those players saw a lot of time. Jeff Schmitz, who almost got to play Saturday night, if Jeff Patak hadn't recovered, he was a freshman. So we've got some players coming back.
Well, actually, the 4 guys you mentioned, and then Matt Kent, who has really shown some promise. He just played behind Scotty Lane, so you're not going to get to play. So those kids coming back. Panos and Aros will both be back. Then Ryan Staley, who is our redshirt this year, who will probably move into the libero position, who is just really fun to watch. I mean, he is really fun to watch. He reminds me a lot of the Ohio State and libero, and also the one from Loyola, that goes after everything. So those kids will all be back, and of course we're hot on the recruiting trail to see what we come up with. In particular, we're looking for a setter and a middle and an opposite. We have signed an outside player from Canada, and so we're all set there.
So you still got a lot of recruiting to do. Is it fairly typical that the bulk of the recruiting is done in the summer, early summer, after the season's over?
Just depends, Mark. We'd like to do it in the fall, and we have done some in the fall in the past. This year, with having the NCAA tournament and a whole bunch of other things going on, we've gotten just a little bit behind. A couple of kids that we were real interested in, just like everybody in our part of the country, ended up going to Stanford and to Long Beach, so that kind of threw everybody in our conference back a little bit because everybody was trying to get those same two kids. We worked with a young man from Canada for, geez, we've been working on him, since January, I guess. So we're real fortunate to have him already in the fold. I know Ohio State's got a couple kids signed already. I don't think Ball State's got anybody signed yet. So it's pretty typical for us. We can sign kids up until August 1st. We're also talking to, right now, 5 kids from 5 different foreign countries. So my job for the next 6 weeks will be to just work on recruiting.
It sounds like what the rest of us need to do all summer long is study foreign languages. We can just divide it up. Everybody take one. And
that's a real strong possibility. We could be very diversified.
So, you want to say anything about the seniors?
Sure, absolutely. What a great career those 4 kids have had. Scotty with us 2, and the other Mike and Chris and Hector with us for 4. I said something at the athletic banquet on Sunday night that the last 2 years, and I didn't go back any further than that, but in the last 2 years, this team has won 80% of the matches we've played. 80% of the matches we've played, we've won. That says enough in itself, I think, for the contribution of those 4 kids, which would include Scotty. And of course, all the awards that they've gotten. Chris and Hector are both on Wednesday night here this week at the NCAA banquet are going to be announced first team and second team All-American for the 2nd year in a row. Mike Cummings has been our team captain. Scotty was the MVP of the MIVA and on the all-tournament team last year at the NCAA tournament. I don't think I can say any more about those 4 kids. We want to wish them the very best. Hector's probably going to go overseas and play, and the other guys are going to come back and finish their degree, and Hector will get his finished a little bit later. So we want to wish them the very best.
Wish them the best. We'll miss them, of course. And I guess you'll all be missing us for the next 8 months. We won't be back on until next January. For head coach Arnie Ball, our sponsors, Touchstone Energy, Fujifilm, the whole crew here at Channel 56, this is Mark Franke. Thanks for watching all season.